I'm Dr. David Ellis. I teach here at Do Re Mi Lessons in Littleton, Colorado, and I'm here to give a presentation about how to develop a successful approach to playing low brass. Often it feels like our peers who play other instruments can do a little bit more. Play faster notes, play more beautiful, expressive sounds, more interesting melodies. And we find ourselves just sort of playing long notes, loud notes, some points of impact in the music, things like that. So I think first it's important to understand why this is. Part of the reason is the physical challenges of the instrument that hold us back a little bit. Our instruments are bigger and require a little bit more air and effort to even produce a good sound, let alone play a lot of notes. Our embouchures also require a large area of our facial muscles to control the little part of our lips that vibrate. And really it takes a lot of time to train and strengthen all these little intricate muscles to do all the things that we want to do on the instrument. It's also, I think, important to recognize that piano and strings and woodwinds, they have a longer history and tradition of serious musical training. For example, back in Mozart's day, most of the composers played piano and violin and wrote really interesting and challenging music for them, and also the woodwind instruments as well. Meanwhile, trumpets and French horns didn't even have valves yet, so they mostly just played big impact moments and things like that. And tubas and baritones didn't even exist yet. And trombones didn't play in orchestras. We mostly just played things like playing in the church choir for extra volume. And even nowadays, in the band and orchestra music we play today, where most of us learn to play our instruments, this never really changed much. Strings and woodwinds still play all kinds of things, melodies, soft, sweet, delicate, lyrical passages to fast, challenging, virtuosic passages. Even trumpets often play big, heroic melodies. Low brass, we just kind of sit in the back and we play those long notes and some loud notes, and every once in a while we get a little passage where we play the melody loudly for excitement. Even in a lot of solo pieces for trombone, it's really more focused on the loud, brash character of sound. I'll play an example from Malcolm Arnold's Fantasy for Trombone to demonstrate. Now, that piece does have some fast technical passages and a brief section later on that is soft and lyrical. But overall, how does this compare to the music we hear our woodwind and piano and string colleagues playing? I mean, are we doomed to play loud, brassy music and never play the sensitive, nuanced, or virtuosic music that they play? How do we change that and keep up with them? I'd say there are three main goals that we have to strive for as low brass players in order to catch up with our peers. First, we need to learn control and technical mastery of our instrument. I mean, we can't play more interesting and difficult music if we can't even physically do it, right? Second, we need to challenge ourselves by seeking more repertoire. Find more music to play and learn it, even if it's written for other instruments. And third, we need to raise our own personal standards and evolve from just being low brass players, just technicians who operate our instruments, into expressive musical artists who just happen to play low brass instruments. we just have to figure out how to accomplish these goals. So, how do we get better at things? Well, the obvious answer is by practicing. But most importantly, we need to understand how to practice effectively. I like to think that there are 3 different types of practice. I call them fundamentals, preparation, and performance. Each type of practice can help us accomplish one of our 3 main goals. So let's talk about the first goal. Our first goal is developing control and technical mastery of the instrument. And we can accomplish this with the first type of practicing, fundamentals. Fundamentals is when we just practice the parts of our playing that we want to get better at. Maybe we want to get better at projecting a great sound, or maybe we want to get better at tuning, or maybe we want to expand our range, or maybe we want to get better at tonguing and articulation, or maybe get better at control and consistency. The key is to find ways to practice the things you want to get better at a little bit every day, or almost every day. You can't fix these kinds of problems in a day or 2. Personally, I like to group fundamentals into 3 categories. The first category being tone production. That includes things like quality of sound, tuning, dynamics, consistency. You can use exercises like long tones to address these types of things. The second category is flexibility. That's moving around the horn easily and comfortably, expanding range, developing better efficiency, and lip slurs are the most important practice tool to help you out on these goals. And finally, the third category would be technique. That would be things like slide or valve technique, tonguing and articulation, and just other miscellaneous things about playing your instrument. So find or make exercises that work on these things. Here's some examples. Let's say I want to work on the dynamic range of my sound. I would make an exercise where I start with a good sound at a comfortable dynamic, hold it steady, and slowly increase or decrease the volume as far as I can go. Maybe try it a few times in a row just to make sure you get it right if it doesn't go well the first time or 2. And then pick some different notes and different ranges to do this. Maybe do something in the high range. Or the low range. And then you can pick different notes every day and just work your way around all the notes on your instrument within your range. Or maybe if you prefer, you can work methodically, one note at a time, down or up in your range. Whatever works best for you. Let's pick something else. Let's say I want to work on expanding my high register. Rather than do what a lot of brass players do and just try to blow really hard and make the notes happen, we've all heard this in band class, someone going, something like that. And it's just never really a good idea. It doesn't sound good, it doesn't help you, and it doesn't really help you get better at controlling your instrument. So instead of doing something like that, I'm going to try to use exercises related to flexibility. I'm going to start on a note that I can play comfortably and work up slowly, little by little. You might see something like this. right away. It's not going to happen within a day or two. But if you do this sort of thing every day or almost every day, you will notice progress over time. Let's say I want to work on technique. Let's say that sometimes my tongue does not line up with my slide or valves or whatever, and I get something like this. That's probably an exaggeration, but if you record yourself and listen back, you might hear little hints of something like that. In this case, I need to slow down and practice being mindful and efficient about my slide or valves, and make sure everything lines up correctly, and then slowly speed things up from there. And over time, you'll get to go a little bit faster. And so on and so forth. Practicing fundamentals may be less fun than working on the music that we play in class, but really it's the only way to get better at controlling our instrument. And you can always get creative and find ways to make it more fun. Make little games out of some of the exercises that you do. Now let's talk about the second goal and the second type of practice. Our second goal is to challenge ourselves with repertoire, music that we wouldn't just play as trombone players in band class or wherever. Find more challenging and interesting music to play and learn it. You can find music that's written for your instrument, you can find music that's written for other instruments, or even you can just try to figure out a song that you're listening to. Whenever we work on learning actual music that we might play in ensembles or in lessons or in performance or even just for fun, that's the second type of practice that I call preparation. I like to break preparation down into 3 steps. The first step is conceptual. That's when we do things like listen to the music, maybe we sing through it, we look through our music and make sure we understand everything in it, all the notes and rhythms and accidentals and all the little instructions and everything. Maybe we practice playing it in our mind, just kind of read through the music, pretend you're playing it, follow along with your air slide or air valves or whatever. This step is all about making sure that we can process the music in real time so that we don't just dive in and start flailing. I mean, we've all probably done that where we just try to start playing something without looking at it, thinking about it, or whatever. We just and it just doesn't really go well at all. I mean, it'd be a little bit like, not paying attention to where you're going and falling in the deep end of the pool because you didn't realize where you were at. So if I pick a piece of music that I thought would be pretty cool to learn, like say, for example, a movement from a Bach cello suite, and I just sit down and start trying to play it without first stopping to think and figure things out, it's probably not going to go very well, probably something like and then it's just a failure. What I really need to do, and what we all need to do every time that we start to learn some new piece of music, is we need to slow down and figure out how the music goes and make sure that we understand everything that we need to about it. Now, the second step in preparation is what I call practical. Now we begin to work on being able to play these passages accurately. Now that we know how it goes and what we need to do, we have a plan, Uh, Obviously, we need to start slow and in control and slowly play it faster as it becomes easier. Don't get ahead of yourself because this step is all about building muscle memory. If you do it wrong too many times, then that's the thing that's going to stick. Just like when I was demonstrating before. You're going to get those wrong notes in there if you aren't always playing it in control. It's way better to play it slowly and in control and play it faster when you're ready to. So you might start really slowly. It might be really tedious. You might start something like. And then maybe the next day. And over time. And so on and so forth. This can be a really tedious step, I know, but you can find ways to make this more fun by, for example, playing a game with the metronome. Like every time you get it right, no mistakes, you get to bump up the tempo, but then every time you get it wrong, you have to bump it down. That can be a fun way that feels, like there's progress happening as you practice. Finally, the third step of preparation is what I call consistency. Now that you can play it, keep practicing it that way so that you can play it right every time. Don't just stop after the first time you got it right, because if you played it 10 times and only finally got it right that last time, that means you played it 9 times not quite the right way. So you need to keep playing it right in order to reinforce the right muscle memory, because that's what all of this is all about here in this step. A good goal would be to see if you can play it 10 times in a row. Maybe you play it 3 times right, and then you have a little mess up in the 4th time, start over. I know it can be a little bit tedious, but patience is one of the most important keys to becoming a better musician, especially during these steps. Now, let's talk about the last of our 3 main goals, and the third type of practice. Our last goal is to evolve from just being low brass players who play long and loud notes and just try to play the right notes and rhythms and instructions and everything, into becoming creative musical artists who can play just as beautifully and just as virtuosic as our friends who play the other instruments. We've talked about practicing fundamentals that help us learn control of our instruments so that we can actually do that, physically do that. We've talked about finding more interesting and challenging music to play and how to approach learning how to play it well. Now, how do we go from just playing more kinds of music more accurately to becoming expressive, virtuosic musical artists? We have to focus on creating the feelings of the music, and we have to practice playing it that way. The third kind of practice that I like to think about, I call performance. This refers to not just when we actually play a concert or something, but we also have to practice playing it this way. We have to practice performing. This is when we really focus on bringing the music to life. This whole type of practice really is almost more of a mental discipline. We have to train ourselves to focus completely on the feelings that we want to portray in each moment of the music and not let ourselves get distracted. That's the difficult thing. Even more nowadays with the internet, and that just has us jumping to a new thing every couple of minutes or every couple of seconds. The brain needs to practice concentrating its imagination for longer periods of time than we're usually used to in order to play music more expressively. Let me demonstrate using a piece of music. This is a trombone solo called Ecstasy by a composer named Yoshioka. I'm going to play the first passage once without engaging my imagination and just playing the notes and rhythms and instructions accurately. take the time to use my creative mind and I think things like, ecstasy, okay, well, this is a Latin version of the word ecstasy, which is an intense, overwhelming feeling, often joyous, but really more profound than that. And I use my imagination to figure out how I can take these notes on the page and use them to portray that feeling. Then I can really bring the music to life. Now, you might have noticed that I used a lot of musical devices in order to bring the music to life. I pulled and pushed the tempo, I used vibrato, I exaggerated some dynamics and other things. It's good to know all of these little tools that you can use, but what really brings the music to life is the emotional intent that drives these decisions and our commitment to this emotional intent while we are playing. And we have to really train ourselves to stay in that mindset because, I mean, we're just really programmed to get distracted and move on to a new thing, especially nowadays with the internet and everything. So we can make beautiful and virtuosic music just like any other instrument. We just have to understand how to do it and break it down into little goals and little steps that we can work on. First, we practice fundamentals to develop more control and technical mastery of our instruments. And we find more challenging and interesting music to practice and learn it carefully and mindfully. And then we train ourselves to engage our musical imagination while we play. Because let's face it, the low brass parts in band class don't exactly help us a whole lot in learning how to do those things very well. So we have to do it ourselves. Now, I just want to leave you with some last-minute thoughts. First, understand that progress takes time. It's not a straight line. You're going to have setbacks. There's going to be days where you feel like you went backwards. It's going to be really frustrating, days where you feel like maybe even quitting. And that's all okay to feel those things. It's just an opportunity to reinforce another side of our playing that needs some extra attention. Patience is really the most important thing in music. The successful musicians are not the ones who just had the most innate talent, not even the ones who just practiced the most carefully. Those are important things, but it's really the ones who never gave up, the ones who kept going no matter how many times they thought about quitting. Finally, you won't become the best musician that you can alone in a bubble. You need to play with other musicians and learn from other musicians. Now, I understand we're kind of in a unique situation right now where this is becoming a little bit extra difficult, but find creative ways around it if you can. One way to do that is taking lessons, even taking lessons online. Because even if you follow all of these guidelines and practice very diligently, teachers have a lot of experience that can help keep you on the right track. They can hear things in your sound that point to problems you might not be aware of that need fixing. They can give you all kinds of ideas on how to practice something, which might help you pass a roadblock. They can answer questions that occur to you, and they can obviously encourage and motivate you when you need that extra inspiration. So thank you so much for joining and listening. I hope this has been helpful for you. A lot of these ideas are applicable to other instruments as well, but I thought this could be especially helpful for low brass players. If you're in the area and you're interested in taking lessons with me, you can sign up at doremilessons.com, or you can find contact information for us on the website if you have any questions. You can also contact me directly through my website, davidellistrombone.com. And of course, with the current state of things, a lot of these are moving to online lessons. I think we're about to do that here at Do Re Mi Lessons as well. So just keep that in mind. That's another option. We can do lessons online via Skype or Zoom or whatever other platforms there are. So think about that, and happy practicing.